She was born with a name that opened every door and closed 1,000 others. Imagine growing up knowing the whole world loved a woman they never truly protected, one who happened to be your aunt. And every time you smiled, someone waited for you to cry instead. That's the life she's lived, quietly, deliberately, for 34 years. From the moment she could understand words, people whispered the same question behind her back. Why doesn't she talk about her? Why doesn't she carry the torch? Why doesn't she become the next version of the woman the planet still can't let go? They wanted tears. They wanted stories. They wanted her to step into a spotlight that had already taken everything from the person before her. But she refused. She grew up split between two continents, shielded by high walls and higher expectations. Her childhood wasn't fairy tales and palaces. It was long flights, new schools, and a mother trying to outrun cameras that never stopped chasing the family name. While the world replayed old footage of a smiling princess waving from a car, she learned early that cameras don't love you back. They just wait for you to break. So she built walls of her own. Elegant, impenetrable, beautifully dressed. When she finally stepped into the light as an adult, the comparisons came fast and cruel. Same eyes, same cheekbones, same blood. But where her aunt had worn her heart raw for the world to see, she wore couture like armor. Where her aunt spoke openly and paid the price, she chose silence and paid a different one. People called it cold. They called it calculated. They called it betrayal. Then came the wedding. A sun-drenched villa in Italy. 5 custom gowns. A groom 32 years older whose fortune could buy small countries. No father walking her down the aisle. No cousins in the pews. No trace of the family that once circled the wagons around a shared tragedy. The headlines screamed abandonment. They said she'd traded soul for security. They said she'd finally shown her true colors, diamonds instead of tears. But what if the opposite was true? What if every perfect photograph, every careful word, every no comment was the only way she knew how to stay alive? If this story is already pulling at something inside you, please share it with someone who needs to hear that choosing yourself isn't the same as turning your back on the people you love. Because here's what almost nobody saw. Behind the polished smiles and the runway lights, she was carrying a grief no child should have to inherit. She watched her father turn into a guardian of ghosts, keeping memory alive at the cost of everything else. She watched her mother run halfway across the world just to breathe. She watched the world build statues to a woman they helped destroy. And she decided, quietly, stubbornly, bravely, that she would not be next. She didn't hate the memory. She didn't reject the legacy. She just refused to die for it. At 34, something cracked open, just a little. In rare, soft-spoken interviews, she finally said the words people had waited decades to hear. I'm proud of who she was. She was magic. But the world already had her. They don't need another one. And I can't be one. She said living in that shadow wasn't an honor. It was a sentence. That every time someone begged her to be more like her aunt, they were really asking her to volunteer for the same slow heartbreak. She said the kindest thing she could do, for herself, for her family, for the little girl who once hid from flashing bulbs, was to build a life where the cameras couldn't reach her heart. And for the first time, the noise started to quiet. People began to understand. The silence wasn't arrogance. It was survival. The distance wasn't disrespect. It was love wearing a different face. She still does the work, quietly. Children's hospitals, mental health foundations, scholarships for girls who'll never know her name. She just does it without the cameras. Because she learned the hardest lesson her aunt never got the chance to finish. Real kindness doesn't need an audience. Today she's 34. Married, private, finally, unapologetically herself. She's proof that you can love someone fiercely and still refuse to follow them into the fire. That honoring too. He dead sometimes means staying alive in a way they never could. And if you walk away from this story with anything, let it be this. You don't owe the world your pain just because they loved watching someone else suffer. You're allowed to step out of the shadow. You're allowed to choose peace over performance. You're allowed to survive differently. If her courage moved you, If it reminded you that your life belongs to you first, do me a favor. Hit like, subscribe. Share this with someone carrying a name, a memory, or an expectation that's too heavy for one heart. Because some stories aren't meant to keep us crying. They're meant to set us free.